"I can save the collapsing bridge in 1 hour," said the welder. The chief engineer laughed in disbelief. "A scrap metal worker save the highway?" When a scrap metal welder faces the failing bridge and says he can save it in 1 hour, the highway department's silence reveals that nobody imagines what comes next. Robert Hammond, the State Highway Authority chief engineer everyone called Iron Hammond, stood in the emergency command trailer, throwing his hard hat across the room so hard it dented the metal wall. "What do you mean the specialized welding crew won't arrive until Monday? This is Friday afternoon. The Interstate 40 bridge has a critical stress fracture. We have 70,000 vehicles per day using this bridge. If it collapses during rush hour, hundreds die, and I go to prison." The command screens showed the catastrophe, a massive stress crack in the main support beam of the bridge's central span, discovered during routine inspection, growing visibly with each passing hour. Engineers had immediately closed 2 of 4 lanes, rerouting traffic, causing backups stretching 20 miles. The most optimistic engineering assessment said emergency shoring would take 3 days. Permanent repair would require 2 weeks and complete lane closure, costing the regional economy $14 million. In this chaos of flashing warnings and frantic calculations, Jimmy Chen pushed through the security perimeter, shop-stained coveralls hanging loose on his thin frame, welding hood tucked under his arm. Jimmy was 59 but looked 75 from decades of breathing metal fumes in scrapyards, welding broken machinery back together for minimum wage. His coveralls were burned through in a dozen places, his work boots were mismatched, and his hands showed the white scars of countless arc burns. But his eyes had a different gleam when they landed on the bridge fracture photo on the main screen. The gleam of someone recognizing a problem he'd solved 1,000 times in far worse conditions. He approached the cluster of engineers, arguing around the stress analysis printouts. "Excuse me, Chief Hammond," Jimmy said in accented English, removing his stained cap respectfully. "I can fix that crack. 1 hour. Mobile arc welding with proper penetration technique. The beam doesn't need replacement. Needs expert fusion welding to restore structural integrity." The silence that followed lasted 4 seconds, but felt like eternity. Then Iron Hammond turned, saw the scrapyard welder in burned coveralls smelling of oil and smoke, and let out a laugh so vicious it made the junior engineers stop their calculations to watch. "Get this immigrant out of here. This is structural engineering requiring licensed professionals and certified welding procedures, not junkyard repairs. Security, remove him before I have him arrested for interfering with emergency operations." The state troopers approached, hands moving toward Jimmy's arms. Department staff gathering for the crisis meeting paused to watch the spectacle, some filming on phones. Jimmy didn't move, didn't lower his eyes, just held his welding hood with both scarred hands and kept looking at the fracture diagram as if it were speaking to him in a language only they understood. That's when the woman approached. She'd been there since the crisis began, observing from the back corner with a tablet and an inscrutable expression. She wore a plain gray business suit, comfortable flats, minimal accessories. She looked like just another insurance adjuster or federal highway inspector. But there was something about her bearing, a quiet authority that required no credentials. "Let the man speak, Robert," she said with a calm but firm voice that cut through the contempt. Iron Hammond turned, irritated. "And who exactly are you?" "Jennifer Walsh, National Transportation Safety Board Field Investigator. I'm here documenting your emergency response protocols for the Federal Oversight Review," she said coolly, displaying federal identification. "I strongly recommend you hear what this individual is proposing." Jimmy turned to her, grateful for basic human dignity. "This bridge beam doesn't need replacement, ma'am. It needs someone who understands metallurgy and proper welding penetration. That crack formed because the original 1987 welds were done too cold, incomplete fusion at the molecular level. Over 38 years, thermal expansion and contraction opened microseparations that became this visible crack. I can re-weld it, using the hot pass technique with proper filler rod chemistry, creating fusion stronger than the original beam. 1 hour of work. No lane closure needed beyond safety barriers. The silence returned, but transformed now. It was the silence of educated disbelief. Iron Hammond took 3 steps forward, face purple with condescension. 1 hour? You've been sniffing too many welding fumes, old man. Our structural engineers say complete beam replacement only. You probably can't even read an engineering drawing. Leave now, or I'll have you physically removed and banned from state property. But Jimmy didn't look at Iron Hammond. He looked only at Jennifer straight in her eyes, with a serenity that disarmed professional skepticism. I only need basic equipment, my portable MIG welder, proper filler rods, and traffic control for safety while I work. I owe nobody anything. I just want to help. This bridge deserves to stand safely. Those last words hung in the tense command trailer air. Jennifer Walsh, who wasn't actually NTSB but Michelle Chen, the State Transportation Secretary, conducting an anonymous competency evaluation of Highway Department leadership, felt something catch in her chest. Not pity, recognition. She saw in that scrapyard welder something completely absent in all the credentialed engineers, all the emergency contractors, all the computer models. Pure expertise earned through decades of hands-on work. "Give him access," Jennifer said, and her voice permitted no argument. Iron Hammond opened his mouth to protest, but the look he received from this supposed federal investigator made him think twice. "But if he causes structural failure, you're personally and criminally liable," Hammond snarled, turning to call his attorney. Jimmy grabbed his equipment cart and headed for the work truck that would take him to the bridge. Jennifer followed, carrying a safety vest and hard hat. They drove through the backed-up traffic in silence, past frustrated commuters, idling trucks, overheating vehicles. When they arrived at the bridge, the scale of the problem was visible, a jagged crack running 18 inches through the main support beam, flexing slightly with each vehicle that passed. Metal groaning audibly. The entire structure was one stress cycle away from catastrophic failure. Jimmy approached the cracked beam without hesitation, running his scarred fingers along the fracture like reading Braille. Jennifer stayed behind the safety barrier, watching. "How did you learn this welding technique, Jimmy?" Jimmy paused, looking back at her in the afternoon sunlight. "I learned it in Vietnam, ma'am, 1972. I was 17, working in Saigon repairing trucks and bridges while bombs fell. Had to make repairs that would hold under impossible conditions with whatever materials we could find. After the war, I came here as refugee with nothing. Spent 40 years in scrapyards, welding broken things back together. American welding schools wouldn't accept my Vietnamese certifications, so I just worked and learned." Jennifer felt her throat tighten. Her family's story repeated. Her grandfather had been a Vietnamese engineer, dismissed in America, dying with skills nobody valued. "And why are you doing this for free, Jimmy? You could demand contractor rates, hazard pay." Jimmy stopped, turned to face her fully, his weathered face serious beneath decades of sun damage and arc burn scars. "Ma'am, when you can help, you help. This bridge let me cross to my first job in America. Let me drive my daughter to college. Let 70,000 people go home to families every day. If I don't use what I know to protect people, what does my skill mean? Money doesn't matter at my age, but saving lives, that matters. That's everything." Jennifer felt unexpected tears, threatening. She stood before something increasingly rare, selfless mastery without expectation of recognition. In that instant, she made a decision that would change 2 lives and potentially save hundreds. The afternoon heat intensified. Jimmy was setting up his welder when the sound of expensive diesel trucks roared onto the bridge. 4 massive commercial vehicles pulled up, emergency lights flashing, followed by a luxury construction trailer. Out stepped a man in his 50s, designer hard hat gleaming, high visibility vest perfectly tailored, carrying an iPad and surrounded by a crew of technicians in matching uniforms. "Chief Hammond," he shouted, striding over with corporate confidence. "It's me, Kenneth Price from Structural Solutions International. Heard about your critical failure and mobilized our emergency bridge response team from Atlanta." Iron Hammond practically sprinted from the command trailer like salvation had arrived, wrapped in expensive logos. Kenneth adjusted his designer safety glasses and smiled with the assurance of someone who'd never failed, because they only took guaranteed high-profit government contracts. "We specialize in emergency bridge stabilization, brought our patented carbon fiber composite reinforcement system and laser-guided structural analysis. We can have temporary shoring installed by tomorrow and permanent beam replacement completed in 2 weeks for our standard emergency rate of $2.8 million. He finally noticed Jimmy, who'd paused setting up his welder, looking over at the commotion with tired eyes. And who's the old immigrant?" Iron Hammond let out a nervous laugh. "Oh, that's just a scrapyard welder claiming he can fix it in 1 hour with basic arc welding. Complete delusion. But this NTSB investigator insisted we let him try." Kenneth looked at Jimmy with the particular condescension wealthy contractors reserve for poor immigrants. "Sir, I'm sure you're very skilled at your trade, but emergency bridge repair requires licensed professional engineers, certified welding procedures, and AASHTO compliance. This isn't fixing a broken lawnmower. You could cause a collapse that kills hundreds." He gave a dismissive wave and was about to deploy his crew when Jennifer stepped forward and blocked access to the work zone. "Kenneth Price, is it?" Jennifer asked, voice calm but carrying unmistakable steel. "Yes, ma'am. Owner of Structural Solutions International, licensed in 42 states, certified by ASCE, featured in Engineering News Record multiple times." "I'm the NTSB field investigator," Jennifer replied, "and I believe federal protocol requires observing all proposed solutions before committing millions in taxpayer resources to a single approach." Kenneth blinked, genuinely surprised. "With all due respect, ma'am, this individual doesn't even have proper commercial equipment. Look at him, using a portable welder from a scrapyard and working without computer-aided structural analysis. This is a critical interstate bridge carrying 70,000 vehicles daily, not a backyard project." Before anyone could respond, Kenneth was already deploying his impressive technological arsenal, setting up laser measuring systems, running structural finite element analysis on high-powered computers, positioning carbon fiber materials. His crew worked with Fortune 500 efficiency, and news helicopters that had arrived to cover the traffic crisis filmed the impressive display of modern engineering. Jimmy just took a deep breath, put on his welding hood, and started working on the crack with his scarred hands and simple welder. No anger on his weathered face, just ancient sadness from seeing the same pattern repeat across 4 decades in America. Money confusing expensive with effective, credentials dismissing actual expertise. Jennifer stayed at the safety barrier, holding Jimmy's water bottle and backup welding rods. "Aren't you going to defend your approach?" Jimmy shook his head, adjusting his welder settings by feel. "Don't need to, ma'am. The metal will speak for me. Metal always tells the truth." For 2 hours, Kenneth worked with maximum corporate visibility. His team ran computer simulations, generated comprehensive reports, positioned temporary supports. News cameras captured every high-tech flourish. Iron Hammond stood beside Kenneth like a grateful supplicant, nodding whenever Kenneth said something that sounded cutting-edge and expensive. "See here, Chief E. Our finite element analysis confirms the crack propagation rate exceeds safety thresholds. Immediate temporary shoring required, followed by complete beam replacement. Our carbon fiber system will distribute loads while we fabricate the new beam. This is 21st century bridge engineering at its finest. He connected more sensors, generated more visualizations, data flowed across screens like financial markets. Analysis complete and verified, Kenneth announced to the cameras and command staff. Emergency shoring tonight, beam replacement beginning Monday. Timeline, 14 days total. Cost, $2.8 million. We can mobilize immediately upon contract execution. Jennifer said nothing. Just watched Jimmy methodically welding the crack, his torch creating a precise bead of molten metal, his hands steady despite their age. 14 days, Jimmy murmured during a pause, lifting his hood briefly. 14 days of traffic jams, wasted fuel, lost productivity, frustrated families. Jennifer felt something profound click into place. The immigrant welder understood community cost in ways the experts never would. You still think you can finish in 1 hour? Jimmy nodded, lowering his hood again. I'm certain, ma'am. But nobody believes the junkyard immigrant. That's when it happened. Kenneth, wanting to demonstrate even more technological superiority, decided to run an ultrasonic structural test. We'll use our state-of-the-art ultrasonic imaging to map the internal crack propagation for the insurance documentation. He positioned the ultrasonic probe on the beam near where Jimmy was working. But what happened next revealed everything. The ultrasonic readings showed something Kenneth's expensive analysis had completely missed. Wait, Kenneth said, loud enough for cameras to hear, confidence draining from his voice. This is showing. The crack isn't propagating internally. It's purely surface level, with no subsurface branching. And there's incomplete fusion in the original welds from... He checked his data. 1987. But that means... His face went pale. This doesn't require beam replacement at all, just proper re-welding of the original fusion failure. But that requires welding expertise we don't. We specialize in replacement, not repair. Iron Hammond's face went white. So we don't need $2.8 million in replacement? Kenneth shook his head, looking genuinely shaken by the implications. No, we don't. This is a repair job, not a replacement. Structural Solutions doesn't do this type of work. We do complete replacements with modern materials. I'm very sorry, but we're the wrong contractor for this. He began packing his expensive equipment rapidly, crew following suit like a choreographed retreat. Within minutes, the trucks were pulling away, leaving Iron Hammond standing in front of news cameras looking like a man watching his competence questioned on live television. Jimmy continued working, unhurried, his welding torch creating a perfect fusion bead along the crack. After another 20 minutes, he shut off his welder, lifted his hood, and inspected his work with critical eyes. Then he turned to Jennifer. Ma'am, the weld is complete and cooling. The beam is now stronger than original factory specifications. The bridge is safe. The silence was total. Iron Hammond stared at Jimmy like seeing him for the first time as a human being rather than a nuisance. Jennifer felt her heart pounding, and that's when she spoke, her voice carrying across the bridge with undeniable authority that made even the news cameras pivot. James Chen, you have full authorization. Highway Inspection Team, this is Michelle Chen, State Transportation Secretary. Perform immediate structural verification of Mr. Chen's work. Iron Hammond's jaw dropped. The revelation of who Jennifer really was hit him like a physical blow. The inspection team rushed forward with testing equipment. They ran ultrasonic imaging, stress analysis, metallurgical inspection. Every test came back the same. The weld was perfect, stronger than the original beam. The crack was completely sealed with full molecular fusion. The bridge was safe for full traffic immediately. The news cameras captured everything. The immigrant welder who'd saved the bridge in exactly 1 hour. The simple technique that worked when expensive technology had failed. The truth that competence doesn't require credentials. Jimmy packed his simple welder, exhausted, covered in metal dust and burn marks, but smiling quietly. Iron Hammond stood speechless. The cameras swarmed, and Jennifer, Michelle, finally revealed herself completely. She removed her fake NTSB credentials and pulled out her real identification as State Transportation Secretary. Robert Hammond, you're suspended pending investigation for gross incompetence and systematic discrimination against skilled workers based on immigration status and lack of formal credentials. She turned to Jimmy. James Chen, the state is creating a new position, Master Welder and Structural Repair Specialist. Your job is teaching our engineers and inspectors the expertise that universities don't teach anymore. Salary, $95,000 annually, plus full benefits and formal recognition of your Vietnamese certifications. Will you accept? Jimmy looked at the official appointment letter she extended, at the bridge he'd saved, at the cameras broadcasting his vindication after 40 years of being invisible. He fell to his knees, crying. 6 months later, Jimmy led the Highway Department's new Master Craftsman Division, teaching young engineers the hands-on skills that computers couldn't replicate, the metal expertise that saved money and lives. And every morning, he'd touch the bridge beam he'd repaired, feeling the solid steel beneath the paint, and whisper in Vietnamese, then English, "Thank you, America. Thank you for finally seeing me."